I am the Philosophical Bachelor, and today I'm going to give you the Ethics by Spinoza in a nutshell. Get ready for Spinoza's dense 200-odd page treatise entitled The Ethics to be crunched down in 10 minutes. It was published in 1677 after his death. Cause and effect is the basis of Spinoza's reasoning. Everything is caused by a prior cause. Every object, every action, and every thought came from causes that took place before them. If we trace the causes all the way back, we would arrive at a first cause. Such a first cause must have always been there. It must have existed already, and hence existence is part of its very essence. Nothing else would have existed at this starting point except this first cause. Since everything is caused by something else, what caused this first cause? Being the first cause, there is nothing else to cause it, but since it exists, it must have caused itself. From this first cause came everything else. So what is this first cause like? It is a substance which is self-caused. All things have attributes which are qualities or properties, and hence so does a substance. Things can interfere and act on one another only if they share the same attribute. For instance, material objects can act on other material objects because they both share the attribute of extension, extension being the physical space taken up by objects. Material objects occupy space or extension, and hence a material object takes up some space which another object cannot occupy unless it interferes with it. There are also immaterial things such as thoughts. Immaterial objects cannot act on material objects because they do not have the attribute of extension. Thoughts can act on other thoughts because they share the attribute of thinking. Things can either be finite or infinite. Things can only act on other things with the same attributes, and in that way, they limit one another. For instance, a material object like water can spread out until it bumps up against another material object like the walls of a tank. The tank limits the water to stay within the tank like a fish tank. So such things are finite because they bump up against other objects of the same attributes. However, substance, the first cause, since there was nothing else at the start, had nothing to bump up against. There is hence nothing to limit it, making it infinite. It has always existed, and since existence is of its essence, it is eternal. This substance, like any object, has attributes, but because it is infinite, its attributes are likewise infinite and eternal. Two of these attributes are extension and thinking. From these attributes come modes, or objects that have that attribute. Everything that has extension, such as rocks and sofas, are modes of that attribute of extension. Everything that has thinking, like ideas and thoughts, are modes of the attribute of thinking. Some things have both attributes, like people, like you and me. We are modes of both extension and thinking. Since this substance is infinite, with nothing that can limit it, there is only one substance. If there is such a thing as God, God will also be self-caused, existent, infinite, and eternal. Hence, God is substance. Since God is infinite, everything must literally be in God. Everything comes from the attributes of God, and all things are modes of God. God is also nature, since nature is all that exists. So Spinoza's God is not a transcendent God, not a God that is separate from nature but is nature. Because cause and effect is the ineluctable process at work, the universe is determined. Everything that happens is an effect of a previous cause and are themselves causes of future effects. Even our thoughts are caused by prior thoughts. Just like how all things are part of nature, human beings are also part of nature and subject to cause and effect. Hence we do not have free will because what we think and do are caused by prior causes. These causes can be internal or external. External causes come from outside us while internal from within us. But a more important distinction is whether causes are adequate or inadequate, which depend on how much knowledge we have of the causes. For a cause to be adequate, we must have an adequate understanding about it, that is, we understand it well. Things that we understand well are things that are common to things, such as motion and rest. These common things are the fundamental underpinnings of our knowledge. Things we have an inadequate knowledge of are things we do not understand well. When we act because we are caused to act by inadequate causes, we are only partially the cause of our actions. We are not the primary agent of our acts, but in fact we are being acted on, being driven to carry out acts which we only partially understand, making us passive. Spinoza terms such acts passions. What if we are the adequate causes of our action? We are active in our acts, and he terms these activity. Since we live in a world with other things, we are affected by them. Affects are what happen when we are affected by things, and the word also means emotions. The main emotions are joy, sadness, and desires according to Spinoza. All emotions fall into these three groupings. We want more joy and less sadness. Joy increases the ability of our minds and bodies, while sadness decreases them. What gives us joy is what is useful to us. What is useful to us is what helps preserve us in our existence. Self-preservation is the fundamental value for all things. Continuing to exist is the primary mission of all things. So we strive to do things that preserve our existence and avoid things that harm our existence. What is useful is what preserves our existence, and hence we consider those things good. What is harmful is what harms our existence, and hence we consider those things evil or bad. Good and bad are relative concepts and are modes of our thinking. Things in themselves are neither good nor bad. They are just good or bad for us relative to our desire for self-preservation. So when good things happen, they give us joy, and when bad things happen, sadness. We want more joy and less sadness. To be able to achieve more joy and less sadness in a more certain way, we do not want to be driven by our emotions, specifically our passions, but instead to act from adequate knowledge, which we derive through reason. The benefits of what emotions can give us can also be achieved from reason alone. Following that line of thought, we also want to increase our knowledge so that more of it becomes adequate rather than partial and inadequate. So the highest goal for human beings is to understand the source of all things more, which is to get more knowledge of God or nature. In short, be more rational and less emotional. The mind is the idea of our body. The mind only knows the body and external things through the interactions between the body and those things. We never know the things themselves, just their effects on us. The more effects we can experience of other things, the more we know about them, and so to increase our knowledge, we need to make our minds and bodies more capable of experiencing more effects and also to be able to affect more things more. We can try on our own to increase our knowledge so as to better preserve ourselves, but we can also use what is useful to us to help us increase our ability to preserve ourselves better. What is most useful to us in helping us preserve ourselves better is what is of the same nature to us, which are other people. We hence want other people to also be maximally useful to us, and so we also want for them what we want for ourselves, which is more knowledge and joy, so that they can be then more useful to us, which then helps us have more knowledge and hence joy. Ethics is about how we should live with others, and Spinoza derives it from an understanding of the nature of reality and of human beings. And that is the Ethics by Spinoza in a nutshell. If you want to know more, I made a much longer video which explains in more detail who Spinoza is, the geometric method which he adopted for the Ethics, why, and perhaps you can better understand his reasoning. Please find a link in the description. Of course, you can finally read the Ethics for yourself. If you do, and I really hope you do, I hope these videos will have given you a broad picture to make your journey with the book easier. Thank you.